All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I am joined by a whole crew of folks, as you can see, so I'll quickly just shout out a few. I think, Councilman Mark Conway is here, the chair of the Council's Public Safety Committee. Councilman Christopher Burnett, he's the third best elected basketball player in Baltimore City. I'm one and two. Katie Dorian, Chief of the Criminal Division for the Maryland Attorney General's Office. Our Police Commissioner, Rich Worley, is with us. Deputy State's Attorney, Tom Donnelly. MONSE Director, Stefanie Mavronis. Elder Joyus Jones. And Elder at the Simmons Memorial Baptist Church and GVRS Community Memorial Voice Partner in the Southwestern District. Representing our GVRS service partners are Tyrone Kent, the Director of Roca, Baltimore. Craig Jernigan, MD and DC. This is the point where the mayor says, put your phones on silent. It's normally a staff person that normally tells me that, and then theirs goes off. Craig Jernigan, Maryland and D.C. Regional Program Director with YAP. Andy, a GVRS participant, and Dr. Aaron Chalfin, Associate Professor of Criminology at the University of Pennsylvania. As you all know, in January of 2022, just a few months after we introduced Baltimore's first ever comprehensive violence prevention plan, my administration began implementing our group violence reduction strategy in the Western District, historically Baltimore's most violent police district, to engage directly with those individuals who are simultaneously at the risk of being either the perpetrator or the victim of gun violence. GVRS is the encapsulation of how we are reimagining the approach to public safety in our city by doing it the right way, not the old broken ways of the past. And we are seeing a very real impact, which is saving lives in our neighborhoods each and every day. This strategy, which, contrary to popular belief, is a focus deterrent strategy, so we'll just get that out of the way, was essential to our efforts to reduce homicides in 2023 to under 300 for the first time in almost a decade, and of course, as we know, had the largest single-year reduction in violence in Baltimore's history. GVRS is a both-and approach that balances targeted enforcement with wraparound support. It gives group-involved individuals the choice to step away from a life that puts them and others in danger, or if they choose not to step away from the life when given opportunities to do so, they will face the full consequences for continued participation in violence. This isn't the first time that a strategy like this had been tried in Baltimore or in other cities around the country, but we have two essential pieces of the puzzle that have often been missing. First, the offer of real pathways and support for those who choose to make a change, and perhaps, and most importantly, the absolute and total commitment of not just myself, but everybody you see here today. It does not work if the strategy is not fully believed in by those who are organizing and implementing it. The foundation of this strategy relies on the partnerships represented here: MONSE, BPD, the State's Attorney's Office, our service providers, YAP and Roca, Baltimoreans like Elder Jones. Each play a vital role in making sure that GVRS works, whether they're identifying the folks that we focus on or are keeping those who we're trying to get on the right path out of trouble, or like Elder Jones, those who leverage their own credibility within their own neighborhoods to let these individuals know that they are not alone in this. That is the work that is the most important. Since we began implementing our GVRS pilot in the Western in 2022, and as of February 5th of this year across both the Western and Southwestern districts, 140 individuals have chosen to step away from the life thanks to the services provided through our partners at YAP and Roca. We have made 223 targeted arrests of individuals who continue to participate in group violence, getting these drivers of homicides and non-fatal shootings off our streets. And with a re-victimization rate of only 5% and a recidivism rate of only 4.3%, the program is having a clear impact on ensuring that those who choose to accept services and change their lives remain safe, alive, and free. These positive results have been sustained over the past 2 years, even as we had to make necessary adjustments that might have complicated things for this team, like police redistricting in the middle of the year and operational and leadership changes at the police department. But again, The commitment has always been there and will always remain. One of the biggest things that we've been focused on is the sustainability of this program. It is too important to Baltimore to let it fail. So while we had to initially push back our expansion timeline in order to ensure that we were able to effectively maintain our momentum in the Western and Southwestern, I am here today and proud to announce that as of last week, GVRS is officially operating in the Central District, and we are working towards the next steps for expansion into the Eastern District. Because as I said when we first kicked off GVRS, we're going to do it the right way. Not the quick way that's going to make everybody happy and we know we'll fail, because if you move too fast, things will break down. I'll let Director Mavronis talk about the next steps for expansion, but I want to be very clear that we're going to continue to do things the right way. Many of those attempts failed because they did not do them the right way. They did not sustain the service and support infrastructure to make sure that when people raised their hands and said they wanted to change their life, that there was something for them to do. Because when you don't do that, when you don't offer that support, we know what happens on the other side. There's broken trust, and oftentimes you're costing someone their life. I want to thank all of our partners again for being here today, especially the State's Attorney's Office, who's been integrated into this strategy from the jump and has played an important role in ensuring that we continue to build strong cases against those driving violence in our communities. Luckily today, you don't just have to take my word on it for how it's working, how effective our strategy is. I'm very glad to be joined by the members of our outside evaluation team from the University of Pennsylvania Crime and Justice Policy Lab. Over the course of GVRS lifespan, they have conducted an external evaluation of GVRS in the Western District, covering the first 18 months of implementation, and today they're going to share some of their preliminary findings. I'd like to now turn it over to Dr. Chalfin to talk about the evaluation. Mr. Doctor?
Thank you, Mayor Scott, for the introduction. Thank you to everyone in attendance and to those tuning in. Owing to the generous support of a consortium of local funders, my team and I at Penn, at our Crime and Justice Lab, have had the honor and the privilege of supporting the City of Baltimore in designing, implementing, and evaluating the group violence reduction strategy based on national best practice. In order to maintain a firewall between the technical assistance work provided by our lab at Penn and any analysis of the strategy's impact, Dr. Anthony Braga, who was instrumental in supporting the design and implementation work, asked me, along with a colleague of mine at Cornell, Professor Max Kapustin, to take the lead in evaluating the group violence reduction strategy. Dr. Kapustin and I had no involvement in any of the implementation work on the project, so we've been able to look at the data with fresh eyes. The preliminary findings that I'm about to present are the results of more than 6 months of research and analysis that continues into the future. In the 18 months after GVRS's introduction into the Western Police District in January of 2022, preliminary estimates showed that the strategy was responsible for reducing homicides and shootings in the Western by roughly a quarter, with no evidence that crimes were moving to other parts of Baltimore. In terms of the human impact, we estimate that GVRS contributed to approximately 60 fewer homicide and shooting victims in the Western over an 18-month period, starting in January 2022 and wrapping up through June of 2023. Similarly, carjackings, which are also closely linked to group activity, also demonstrated significant reductions of about a third over that time period. What's particularly noteworthy here is that despite the central role that BPD played in the intervention, GVRS has had these impacts without contributing to any detectable change in the overall number of arrests that were made in the Western District over the time period. So this means that GVRS implementation appears to be consistent with the values set forth from the very beginning of a triple bottom line, which means to reduce gun violence that's affecting communities, to reduce incarceration, and to lessen the burden of policing on communities by generating fewer and better and more just interactions between police and community members. These results are also consistent with a large body of scientific evidence demonstrating that strategies like GVRS, similar strategies in other cities, when implemented successfully, are associated with reductions in violence elsewhere too. To achieve these effects in the Western District, community partners and city partners conducted 175 individual interventions during which they directly and respectfully communicated the legal and safety risks associated with continued violence, and people were offered supportive services. Through these interventions, 90 individuals, this is over the first 18 months, at the highest risk of shooting someone or of being shot themselves, accepted services, including mentorship, employment support, and mental health treatment. During the same time period, BPD, with the strong support of the state's attorney's office, conducted 144 focused arrests of groups and individuals who continued to engage in gun violence and, as such, self-selected for enforcement attention. The evaluation's early findings underscored the potential of GVRS to reduce gun violence while avoiding the collateral consequences of mass arrests. They also demonstrate the power of targeted interventions focused on a small number of individuals and groups at the very highest risk of becoming involved in gun violence. Finally, they make a strong case for continued investment in GVRS in order to bring it to scale. We're currently undertaking further analyses of GVRS, exploring different aspects of the intervention, including its individual level impact, whether those exposed either through services or enforcement, as well as people connected to those folks, experience changes in behavior. We're also looking at the cost effectiveness of the program. I can say that the evaluation's positive initial results certainly would not have been possible without the tireless dedication of all of the partners represented here in this room, as well as many others who couldn't be here today. We look forward to continuing to support the City of Baltimore in expanding GVRS and creating a safer and more just Baltimore. I'll now turn it over to Police Commissioner Worley for his remarks.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As Mayor Scott and Dr. Chalfin have previously mentioned, the group violence reduction strategy is working. BPD is a proud partner in this strategy and work to reduce gun violence and make the city safer. The men and women of the Baltimore Police Department continue to go out each and every day to serve the city, and I could be not more pleased or more proud of the work that they do in the midst of such challenging circumstances of being short in staffing. This strategy involves a multi-agency collaboration between our department, city government, law enforcement partners, social services providers, and community members, in which all work together to reach those who most want to be part of the solution and provide them with services and pathways from a life of crime. Since the beginning of 2022, BPD has arrested more than 220 violent crime drivers associated with group violence and investigated and dismantled 10 drug trafficking and violent organizations, all directly tied to the GVRS strategy. Stopping the violence is a must, but we also are here to help. This strategy relies solely and, well, mostly on services, but at the same time, accountabilities for those that want to continue the life of crime and continue the violence. GVRS is a person-based strategy where our officers focus their enforcement on groups and individuals to close the violence gap. We work closely through patrol and investigative units to gain intelligence and go after the key drivers of violence in the neighborhood who do not wish to accept the services and wish to continue a life of crime. At the same time, we work alongside many nonprofit and community organizations to provide trauma-informed care, community-led prevention efforts, and resources to victims of crime and addiction. We all have a shared goal to reduce homicides and shootings and keep those of the very highest risk of harming and being harmed and keep them safe and alive. Together, we are investing in prevention, intervention, rehabilitation, and reentry in order to strengthen our comprehensive violence reduction strategy. We know that this strategy is working, and I'm looking forward to expanding the work in the near future. We can already see that it is going to be very fruitful events as we move into the districts, and I can't wait until we move to the other districts because the strategy is going really well so far in 2024. I know that the ongoing collaboration with Mayor Scott, the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, the State's Attorney's Office, our law enforcement partners, and community members will lead to success and positive results in the overall violent crime reduction throughout our city. Thank you, and at this time, I'll turn it over to State's Attorney Tom Donnelly.
Good afternoon. I'm Deputy State's Attorney Tom Donnelly, standing in for Ivan Bates, who's in Annapolis today. I want to thank Mayor Scott, Commissioner Worley, the Baltimore Police Department, as well as Stefanie Mavronis and the whole MONSE team for being our partners in the gun violence reduction strategy. I also want to acknowledge Dr. Chalfin, who you just heard from the University of Pennsylvania, Elder Joyus Jones, the Director of Roca, Tyrone Kent, and Director Craig Jernigan of YAP for their work in collaboration with our office and the GVRS program. At the State's Attorney's Office, we work to deliver justice for victims of crimes and their families after an offense has been committed. Under the leadership of the State's Attorney Bates, that work has accelerated, particularly with regard to the GVRS program. Since taking office in 2023, our office has made progress in increasing cooperation with our partners in GVRS through regular meetings, intelligence briefings, and investigations, increased data sharing with our partners for raw data, as well as data compiled and organized by our criminal data analysts, identifying key performance indicators, and working to establish tracking mechanisms within our case management system to track overall performance with the GVRS program, and also incorporating GVRS prosecutions into the state's attorney's overall prosecution strategy. For 2022 and 2023, the operational years of GVRS, we've charged approximately 218 GVRS cases. At the beginning of January, the numbers reflected we had closed approximately 170 of those cases and currently have about 48 active cases. For the 170 closed cases, there were 111 guilty findings, 5 not guilty, 8 stats, and 41 null process. Out of the 41 null process, 21 of those were either adopted and prosecuted by another agency, prosecuted in juvenile, or superseding indictments were issued for them. The bottom line is that these numbers reflect that together through constant collaboration with our partners standing here today, we are successfully building prosecutable cases to fulfill our role within the GVRS program. But you've heard State's Attorney Bates say many times that we cannot prosecute our way to a safer Baltimore, and that's where our collaboration with all the partners we have here today becomes so important. GVRS is the proactive approach that we would otherwise not be able to achieve in a courtroom through traditional prosecution. You've heard Mayor Scott, Commissioner Worley, State's Attorney Bates, and U.S. Attorney Eric Barron discuss the progress of crime reduction in Baltimore, and I'll not go through all those successes here today, but even with these successes, the work is not done. Our administration recently celebrated its 1-year anniversary in office, and we are only just beginning. This year, in anticipation of the expansion of the GVRS program throughout the city, we'll be adding several crime analysts to our staff to aid in the investigations and assist in identifying those groups that are causing violence in Baltimore City. We'll be recruiting more attorneys to work in the major investigations unit and felony narcotics units where most of our GVRS cases are housed. We'll continue working on tracking mechanisms for cases and data production capabilities to produce reliable data to share with our partners in the GVRS program. Myself, State's Attorney Bates, and our entire executive team are confident that with continued collaboration and partnership with our law enforcement partners, fellow government agencies, and non-government entities, we will see a safer Baltimore in the future for everyone. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Elder Joyus Jones.
Good afternoon, everybody. Amen. My name is Elder Joyus Jones. I am a retired nurse here in Baltimore and also an elder at Simmons Memorial Baptist Church. But most importantly, I am a resident of Evanston Village. I serve as a community moral voice today and the city's group violence reduction strategy. We acknowledge that law enforcement and service partners are crucial, and public service partners are all crucial for the city. But one of the most important assets that we have are in the community, Baltimoreans, like me, who care about our city and care what's happening. And I'm proud to say that I'm a part of GVRS in Southwest Baltimore. It takes a village to build a safer Baltimore, and those closest to the problems are those usually inside of the problem or in the community. And as a community voice, we cannot write a prescription for a patient we have not met. I firmly believe that when we come together as a community and as a village to stand against gun violence in our neighborhoods, we can make and we will make a difference. This is something that I and other members of the community have been working on for a long time, but finally, we have a city that is supporting this work and leveraging the voices that are bringing our communities together. As GVRS, Community More Voice, we play a crucial role in this, our credibility, our relationships, that we spread the strategic anti-violent message, changing the behaviors and the mindset of individuals in our community involved in violence and reducing shootings, one individual interaction at a time. We are able to deliver this message in ways that the city can't, in ways that make a difference, most likely that they will accept our services and accept the city's services and the support and step away from a life of violence and a life of crime. Don't get me wrong, this is hard, honest, but real conversations that are being had to get folks to back on the right track and to turn their lives around. The decision to turn your life around and to provide them with an opportunity to improve our community, making us a better Baltimore. I encourage the citizens of Baltimore not just to talk about change, but to get involved, become a community moral voice, and be the change. Get involved. Thank you. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Tyrone Kent at Roca. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Scott, for the invitation to participate in this event. Roca is honored to work with the Commissioner Worley, Baltimore Police Department, and Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement as a designated referral partner of the Group Violence Reduction Strategy for high-risk young people ages 16 to 24. For those of you who don't know Roca, we employ relentless outreach and an evidence-based focused deterrence model rooted in brain science to heal trauma and provide young people with skills they need to change their behavior. Last fiscal year, we were privileged to support 417 of the highest risk young people in Baltimore. About 10% of those referrals were referrals from GVRS. We're extremely proud of the outcomes of those engaged with us for at least 18 months. 91% saw improvement in the behavior health, and 95% demonstrated improved emotional regulation. And for those with us 24 months, 72 had no new arrests, and 94% had no new incarceration. But more rewarding than our data is the growth and change we see in so many young people we are privileged to support. Through our Rewire CBT, our young people have learned new skills and developed new habits for better outcomes. We look forward to continuing our work in partnership with GVRS, Mayor Scott, and the Baltimore Police Department to stem the tide of urban violence across the city. Thank you. Now I'll turn it over to Mr. Craig Jernigan of YAP.
Thank you, Mr. King. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Scott, and everyone gathered here to learn more about Baltimore's commitment to reducing gun violence. I'm Craig Jernigan, a proud Baltimorean and Regional Director for Youth Advocate Programs, also known as YAP, where I've worked for the past 19 years. A lot of people do not know that YAP is not new to this work. YAP is in our pre-50th anniversary year of partnering with youth justice, child welfare, behavioral health, and other systems to deliver community-based services and alternative to incarceration and residential care. So while YAP began our partnership with the City of Baltimore 6 years ago, we have partnered with Maryland Department of Juvenile Services and Department of Human Services for more than 20 years. The YAP approach to neighborhood safety is the same as our approach to working with DJS and DHS youth and families. We hire staff who share life experiences with those we serve, and we train them to connect program participants with individualized tools to see and nurture their strengths and put their lives on a positive course and give back to their communities. YAP's Baltimore GVR's work is guided by the principles behind our time-tested youth and family wraparound services model. Among those guiding principles is focusing on strength and neither rejecting or ejecting participants. YAP's GVRS program participants are identified as being at the highest risk of being engaged in violence, and they need that kind of support. Andy, will tell you more about how YAP and GVRS has helped him.
How y'all doing? My name Andy. I'd like to thank Matt Scott and Greg, Miss Crystal, the whole YAP team. I'd like to thank y'all. My name Andy. I was like 12 when I first started being in the streets, like 12, 13. It was violent, a lot of drugs. But, I mean, that was the life I chose. So, I mean, last year around October, I went to the drug rehab program, and I had met the YAP team. From there, that's when I started getting introduced to the YAP team, Miss Crystal. They started helping me. Miss Crystal helped me make a resume, find a job with the city, the Baltimore Convention Center. I'm with the maintenance team. So I just been working on bettering my life. Like, so far, like, I've just been trying. Like, it's not a microwave process, but, man, it's hard work, but this is what I gotta do. Like, so I'm trying to better my life. So I know I still got a lot of work to do, but I'm willing to take the chance, like, to do what I need to do. Like, I just want to say thank you for giving me a chance to change my life, help make my family life better. Like, I know I done put my family through a lot. I'm just trying to do different with myself. Like, for a long time, like, my mother been going through things, like, me living the life that I was living. Like, so she happy for me now. Like, my daughter, she happy for me. She don't call me mean no more. Like, man, it's still a work in progress with my son, but I text him every morning. Like, man, I'm just trying. Like, that's all I could do is right now. Like, just work on what I can do. Like, thanks for letting me share.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Andy. Let's give Andy another round of applause. I also want to thank Elder Jones, and I see so many of our community moral voice partners in the room. If you wouldn't mind, can you stand up and can we give you an applause too for the work that you do with the strategy? My name's Stefanie Mavronis. I'm the director of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. MONSE's role in the group violence reduction strategy is ensuring coordination across partners, maintaining the fidelity of the focused deterrence model, identifying and mobilizing community moral voice to get those identified by the strategy to come to the table, and working closely with our service providers, YAP and Roca, with the goal of keeping participants safe, alive, and free. I'm proud of the work of this collaborative and what we've been doing since launching GVRS in January 2022, and my team is committed to expanding this life-saving transformative strategy across Baltimore. We engage the individuals we know are most at risk of gun violence and present them with a choice: stop engaging in violence or expect swift, certain, and legitimate consequences for your continued involvement. And as you've heard today, it isn't just city government or the police saying this, it's also the community delivering that message as part of the strategy. This is the power of implementing a strategy that doesn't solely rely on law enforcement. We're interrupting cycles of violence and proving that when people, their families, and communities are given support that's responsive to their needs, from housing to mental health to behavioral health services, case management, life coaching, they will often make the choice to step away from the life. When we look at the data, we see that group-involved individuals are the main drivers of violence in the districts where GVRS is active. Across the central, southwestern, and western, anywhere from 60 to 75% of homicides are traced back to these group-involved incidents. And so while these groups are responsible for the majority of homicides in these districts, they represent less than 2% of the overall district population. And so this strategy is really about identifying the right people and showing the power of what can happen when we do that. Since the start of GVRS, we've conducted 318 custom notifications to the people identified as violence drivers. Like the mayor mentioned, we've connected 140 participants to services through YAP and Roca. GVRS is a big change in culture. We're coordinating across law enforcement agencies, service providers, and communities in ways we haven't seen before. And it's taken time to build the governance and policy and processes associated with that, something that we're constantly refining. Before we expand to a new district, it's our job to ensure that we're on solid ground and that the fidelity of this model is maintained. The work has taken time to get right in close partnership with BPD and the state's attorney's office, and we're ready to continue moving forward. It's worth mentioning that since the start of this strategy, we've cut the time it takes for us to make a referral for individuals identified to a service provider in half. Referral time is just one of the many metrics that we use to see how we're doing with the strategy. And I echo the mayor when I say that we're proud to officially expand into the Central District and work to reach the same positive outcomes we've seen in the Western and Southwestern. GVRS is and always has been a citywide strategy, and now that we've begun the operations-wide shifts and expanded to the Central District, we have the platform that we need to expand this work throughout the city. We're beginning now to lay the groundwork for expansion to the Eastern District, our next GVRS district, as the mayor mentioned, with a goal of standing up the strategy by the end of Q1, beginning of Q2 of this calendar year. The Eastern District has already started implementing elements of GVRS, and we believe this goal is ambitious yet achievable. We're ready to deepen this work, build capacity, and ramp up our expansion processes so that we can move even beyond the Eastern by the end of this calendar year. Thank you, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Mayor Scott for questions.
Thank you, Director. And before we take questions, I just want to say to Andy that we are proud of you. We know what you're going through isn't easy, but you don't have to do it alone. Everyone will continue to be here for you and your family. But for those in the media, this is why we are doing this work this way. Because as I often say, the folks that are dying in the streets of Baltimore are more than numbers to me. They're actually people. And being a young man who grew up in a neighborhood like this one that we're in, and losing so many of my friends because we lived in a city, quite frankly, that didn't care about us. As somebody who grew up through that and had that experience, I made it my life's goal to be different, to see the people that were unseen, to see the folks that were like my friends who are dead and gone, who could have been anything in the world if we just invested the time and energy to see them as humans, not just some number to get off the streets or to just push away so that people didn't see them. And with that, we'll open up for questions.
I'm wondering what you attribute the rise in homicides this past year on the Western District to. They led the city in 41 homicides this year.
Yeah, I think that you guys can do the realization that we did redistricting, right? So halfway through the year, parts of the district were added in that weren't parts in the district the week before, and that crime came with that. But when you look at the historical context and the historical nature of crime in the Western District, and not just said by me, but as verified through critical academic partners, we know that this strategy works. But we did redistricting, so you gained Pennsylvania Avenue into the Western District last year, and anybody that has lived in Baltimore for more than 2 seconds knows about the historic nature of adding Pennsylvania Avenue into any district.
Director Mavronis just mentioned the timeline for expanding the program citywide, to have it citywide basically by the end of this calendar year. If I'm remembering correctly, the original timeline was to have it citywide by basically the middle of this year. What are your thoughts on why this is taking longer than originally expected?
Well, as we said before, right, and let's take a step back to Adam when we first talked about GVRS, right? I said we will keep this timeline, but if things are happening that will have to cause us to slow down so that we don't lose the strategy, so the strategy doesn't remain successful and we run the risk of being the third time that we fail, that I would slow us down. And we had to slow down. We had to go through police redistricting, right? We cannot just jump into another district going through that process that we hadn't gone through in Baltimore for more than 60 years and think we were just going to just keep moving as we were before. Making sure we obviously had leadership changes in the police department. Things had to be realigned rearrange, and we've been working with our partners in the State's Attorney's Office. It was never a question whether we were going to expand, but as I said from day one, we were going to expand the right way. But as the director already said, when you think about the Eastern District, for example, they're already doing much of, if not most of, the GVRS work already is happening in the Eastern District, and you saw how well they did in the Eastern District with crime and violence last year. We know we will get there, and we will just keep pushing forward, but we will do it the right way and take our time and not rush it so that we fail like two mayors before me.
Emily?
I had a question for the researchers. Last year, in 2023, we saw a historic drop in homicides in Baltimore and also around the nation. How can we be certain that this drop in gun violence and homicides is definitely part of a result of the GVRS and not a coincidence with the national trend?
Yeah, no, that's always the question, right? Correlation versus causation. So what we do is we look within Baltimore, and we look at the Western District. We find other parts of Baltimore. We take a weighted average of other parts of Baltimore, such that we're finding places that have similar levels of homicides, of carjackings, of other crimes, also similar trends. And we can show that these are two areas, the Western District and this sort of synthetic Western District that we created. They're on very, very similar trajectories. And then starting in January 2022, they diverge in a really obvious way. And look, as a person, I want projects like this to succeed. As a researcher, my job is to be a skeptic, right? So we, did a lot of testing to see, is this something that could happen by chance? And it's very unlikely that the Western District would have this type of change in homicide rates just by chance. So yeah, a lot of cities had good years in 2023. We're only looking through the first 6 months of 2023, but this seems very likely to be driven by changes in law enforcement and changes in social service provision.
And I would just add, Emily, that we have to be reminded that we nearly doubled the reduction around the country. And those of us who've been around know that there have been many years around the country when everyone saw their homicides go down and Baltimore saw theirs go up. This is about this work of all our partners here and even those who are not here that are working every day to drive down violence in Baltimore City.
I also have a question for the researcher. I noticed in the 5-page summary, you specifically mentioned police staffing shortages as a challenge for expansion. Can you talk about what you meant by that and how that fits into the redistricting challenges we've heard?
Yeah, I could probably say a few words as a researcher. There's probably other people here who can speak more to the redistricting. Yeah, no, in general, right, this is a work that takes a lot of resources, and staffing challenges are always going to be a rate limiting step. So we try to just call attention to those variables, in our white paper that we released. But I don't know who should. Okay.
Yeah, the staffing shortages are something we have to deal with. We can't let that hold us up, and we can't let it as an excuse. So we will adjust. We have good command in place in those places. We lost over 100 officers in 2023 alone, but we're still going to continue. GVRS is the #1 strategy for the city, the group violence reduction strategy. It's working, so why wouldn't we keep putting resources in it? And we did. We had to reorganize a little bit because they lost some people, and we had some command changes there as well. But we're stable now, and we've got more oversight than we've ever had over GVRS, and it's going to succeed as we move across the city.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ms. Audrey Hyde.
Ms. Audrey.
From the People's Association of Vulnerable Community. Thank you all for your service and all that you do it. My question is about, we just recently had a homicide in our community. And so with all of these individuals that are up here, some people know me to be an advocate in the community, so I'm looking at how can all of you up here some kind of way help us, because we really didn't have that much crime or homicides in the Oliver community, but now it's upticking. So one of the things I'm working on is those young people on the corners, but then we have issues with, I'm gonna say background-friendly jobs to give them and things like that. So we have a lot of issues with that. And I also just want you to know, I'm also on the other side of that violence reduction because my son was killed 5 years ago.
Yes, ma'am.
So, but I'm still out here saying to these young people, I need to get you some help. But it looks like more of a just lock them up kind of thing. On the corner, lock them up. But again, I'm out there trying to help them. So I'm looking at all you gentlemen.
We got you, Miss Audrey. I'll make sure that they follow up with you. And we know about the homicide too, and it's something that the commissioner spoke about last weekend as well. Thank you.